All right, so let's jump into this. Is the first interview of the podcast, and it's a special one. We have Jimi here, and for those that are listening, you got to see the video. All right, we'll check it out later. But Jimi is the leader of Fearless Agility, and I'll let him introduce himself, and then we're going to talk about XP and everything else and whatever comes up. But Jimi, why don't you introduce yourself if you don't mind, sir?
Sure. I'm Jimi. I'm a certified Scrum trainer with the Scrum Alliance. I started out life as a baby. That's too far back. Let's fast forward. I started out as a grown-up, a college dropout in a series of not super successful bar bands and session musician. And then I decided, I don't know, in my late 20s that I liked living inside, and a van doesn't count, and I like eating meals every day. That's not guaranteed either. So I went to Loyola University in Chicago and got an undergraduate degree in maths. Nice. Now, here's the problem with that. That doesn't get you a job either. That makes you an overqualified Starbucks barista. I mean, no disrespect to people need their coffee, but yeah. So I got an undergraduate degree in math. But what you could do is I went out to Silicon Valley on the West Coast by San Francisco, and I just managed to convince them that I was a software designer. And I started doing that. I didn't love it, but it did introduce me to agility. In 99, Don Wells put out a website, extremeprogramming.org, or I think it's .org, and it's back up. It keeps going down. Don's a little bit on in years, and I think he just doesn't pay that much attention to it. But it's the best website that I had ever seen to explain extreme programming. And it still is. And I mean, that's been around a long, long time. So some project manager introduced it to me because I snuck into project management through the back door of development, right? So I was a software designer at a publishing company, which was weird. Then one of my project managers was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this?" And I'm like, "Extreme programming? That sounds cool." And then when I started to look into it, I'm like, yeah, this is where I would like to work if I'm going to do this. Now, pretty soon after that, this guy, I can't remember his name, is Yuri or Sergey, something like that. This is a Russian guy, and he comes in and he got hired as a lead developer or something. And he comes in and he says, "Oh, you know about XP?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I mean, I know what Don Wells' website says." And he says, so let's do it. This is a small team because it was me and like 3 other people doing the development, and then my friend who was the project manager that told me about XP, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. And it was the best experience I had doing software, because normally my experience had been and continues to be that it's painful. Software teams fail 3 out of 4 times. According to Barry Baim and Steve McConnell at Construction, all that. So I got sick of failing, even though the XP worked great, but then Yuri or whoever left and it didn't come back, and then I decided, you know what, forget this. I'm just going to go into project management. I got a PMP in 2003 or something like that. Yeah, for the same reason everybody does.
Yeah.
So I could tell people I'm a pimp.
Say it. Go for it.
Yeah. I had to. And our mutual friend, Michael Truman Kavanaugh, I think, gave the best quote for this, which is because you're a pimp because you can't spell pimp without PMP.
It's technically true. It's
right. I'm just trying to make it cool for the kids, man. But yeah, so I got my PMP. I was a nut for project management, so I got an MBA in project management. I think I'm 6 credits away from a master's in project management, but then I was like, well, do I need that really? I don't know. And then this guy showed up and ruined everything I thought about project management. He was doing Scrum, which I thought was dopey. I'm like, XP was awesome, but the Scrum, he doesn't do anything. He has some hippie loving with his developers every day. That's it. But I sort of stumbled into that world, and I realized that I like the kind of work that it's for, and it's a different kind of work that it's for than traditional project management, which I also really like and have done tons of. So I mean, it's an accident, right? Like I quit a executive level job at a publishing company running a PMO to follow this path, and then I crossed paths with Ken Schwaber and a couple other people who were early on. And back then it was sort of like, hey, you want to be a CST? And I'm like, what? I don't know what that is. All you got to do is work 2 days a week, 3 weeks a month, and we're going to fly you everywhere. I'm like, wait, hold on. So I get to fly everywhere, all over the world, and I get that, and they paid me a ridiculous amount of money because CSTs are talking bags of money. So it was all right, but I think the whole agility was like a bunch of troublemakers in the software industry, and then it sort of blew up brand wise. So big consulting picked it up, and once that happened, it spread everywhere. At least the words did. So I spend most of my time explaining what extreme programming and Scrum and agility are not.
Okay, so let's go back to I like the history of stuff, and this is like letting me nerd out, just listen to you, which is cool. So like back in the, like if we go back to XP, and most people don't know it past the acronym, put the X and the P. Like, what is it? Like, how would you break it down? Or maybe it's you take the inverse, like it is not. Like, how do we understand what it is?
So extreme programming came up around the same time as Scrum. Scrum was a bunch of project management people trying to figure out how to manage software projects. Kent Beck and Ron Jeffries and Chet Hendrickson and Bill Wake, I think, and a bunch of people who are pretty well known were on a software development team at Chrysler Corporation in like 1995, right around the time that Ken wrote his white paper. And extreme programming is Kent Beck came up with a lot of it. Ron Jeffries came up with a bunch of stuff too, and so they all sort of contributed. But it did this crazy thing where it did software development iteratively and incrementally, and people had been doing that since the 80s, right? IID, but it did it in a way that with these small iterations, and then they had an actual end user on their team, and their end user would write 2 or 3 sentences on a card and then hand it to the developers, and then they would make software that did that. But it has 12 or 13, depending on which book you read or who you ask, practices in it. Some of them people know, like continuous integration, test-driven design and development, pair programming, merciless refactoring, collective code ownership. I think those 5 are essential. If you don't have those 5, and pairing. If you don't have those 6, you're doing something else. But it's super intense, and it's one of the problems in software and product development generally is making the wrong thing because we don't talk enough to the people that are going to use what we're making. It just always sort of been that way. So their 2 big contributions, the XP guys, was I think what originally started out as awesome user stories, which is a user writing a story about themselves and what they do, non-technical, plain language, few sentences. They'd write that down and then give that was genius. Because it was, and I think it was the Object Mentor guys. I think James Grenning might have been the first one to use the cards, and that was, I think, is mostly accidental. But people, what we didn't realize, or at least what I didn't realize, is if you give an end user a card to write something on, they can't write that much. That's why they use cards, right? Because they can't write that much, so it limits the difficulty of the whatever it is that we're trying to solve or satisfy, the need or problem. So that's thing, and it also makes visualization very, very simple. And so a lot of that stuff got adopted by Scrummers too, but my only success in the Agile world has been Scrum as a project management wrapper around extreme programming. Now I have had a couple of teams that did others. I had somebody doing Crystal, which is Alistair Coburn's Agile approach. I had somebody doing behavior-driven development. I've had somebody do feature-driven development. I wasn't as tightly involved in those, but Scrum by itself is just project management. And it's not even really project management because it's 180 degrees different from, like, if you go back to like PMBOK Guide 4th edition or 5th edition, there isn't a lot of agility or anything in there. They talk about, progressive elaboration and rolling wave planning, but it's mentioned twice, at least in 4, I can't remember, 4 or 5. It's mentioned twice, but they're just glossary entries. It doesn't tell you how to do any of it. So I've moved into project management. I've forgotten pretty much about extreme programming and picked up Scrum and was starting to be in that world. And there was a mismatch for me between what I had experienced in extreme programming and Scrum. And then
what was the mismatch? Like, what was the big mismatch in your brain?
Scrum doesn't tell you anything about software. Scrum
Okay.
just wraps around whatever you're doing. So you technically you can wrap Scrum around the waterfall. It just is painful and doesn't work, right?
Right.
But you can. So the person who introduced me to Scrum was pretty new at it too. I mean, everybody was. So this was, I don't know,
Mhm.
2003. I guess it was about halfway through my MBA. I realized that I didn't want to be a traditional project manager because that mostly involved building buildings and public works and I took so many electives as project management classes as electives. One of my professors, I had been with a bunch and I really liked him. I'm like, hey, so every time we have a case study or every time there's a question, it's all about like building buildings and public works and stuff like that. And he says, yeah, that's mostly where project management lives. And I said, well, I'm a software project manager. So like, you got any advice about that? And this was devastating. It shattered me. He just said, you mean like with computers? Like, yeah. He's like, I don't know if you could use it for that, but maybe. So like anybody, and I had a lot of people at that time who you'd tell me you're a project manager and they would think that you were in construction or something like that. And I tell them I was software and there's no project managers in software. I'm like, no, there are. I run a whole PMO. So it's XP with those practices sort of, how should I put this? It executes what Scrum sets up and creates an environment for. Scrum is training wheels for agility. It's it's a lightweight framework. You put it around what you're doing, and it shows you where you are not agile. If for some reason you have to break a rule, and there aren't that many, that's usually the framework telling us there's something that we need to change because we're not being agile. So
and then we put it on like, just so I understand the metaphor that you're using, like the lightweight framework, and then you were putting it on like, jet fuel by putting like XP inside of it.
yeah, I mean XP is jet fuel for software development. It's weird that more people don't do it. There's a lot of Scrum haters in the world. A lot of them are XP people because right around 2010 or so, all of a sudden everything started getting mashed up. And people who, when it starts becoming word of mouth and, it's like a game of telephone. Whoever started the idea, it doesn't stay that way, right? It changes every time it goes through another human's head. So it sort of agility with big consulting and everything else, and even XP became like this corporate brand. And people have, and now it's the status quo, right? Now in the tech world anyway, agility is, we're doing agile. Which, I mean, take a step back. That sentence doesn't even make sense out loud.
Yeah.
You can't do agile. But so that's sort of, so the extreme programming part is a way to execute software development in an agile environment. And I think my main experience is that with Scrum. And each one of those approaches is lacking in certain areas, right? Like Scrum has no execution part. It's just you put 2 weeks around whatever work you're doing, and then you stop and reflect on it, and it's very simple. It's very lightweight. We've made it more complicated because a lot of XP terms got sucked into electronic tools like Jira, and so there's this whole separate entity that I would call Jiragile. Jiragile.
So when some people might not even know that the terms that they're using, where they came from. So what are some of those, and you mentioned a bunch, but what are some of those XP generated like ideas, tools, et cetera, whatever, that have worked themselves into common parlance, if you will?
Continuous integration certainly is something, because it existed before the XP guys came up with it, but they mean something different. We mean something different when we say continuous. We literally mean continuous. Like most places you go, they do continuous integration overnight.
Okay.
Because their tech isn't agile enough to do it the way XP does it, which is hourly. Right? There's full builds, full testing on an hourly basis, right? And the workflow cycle, you got two. Here's another thing that I think was brilliant, but it's hard to sell to people. Pair programming reduces, and Kent had this study. Pair programming reduces downstream error by 85 to 90%. So if you got a programming pair doing XP, people aren't going to find much wrong with their code. I mean, it's bulletproof. And there's a bunch of other practices that matter, but certainly continuous integration, that's hourly. And we do something called red green refactor. That's test driven development and design, right? We test first. So you write a test and it fails because your code doesn't have any code that does it. And then you write the code that does it. And then when the test passes, you refactor and check in. But that typically, for a really experienced programming pair, that happens in minutes, not hours. So 15 to 45 minutes maybe it's sort of a rule too. You can't keep stuff checked out because that creates integration problems and all kinds of other things. So if you go to Don's site, it has it's a little bit old school and it's very wordy, but it's a nice walkthrough, and you can find. So what are you going to find in XP that you hear everywhere? You're going to hear continuous integration, although people aren't doing it the same way. You're going to hear the word story, but not the way XP does it, right? XP calls it a user story because it's a story a user writes about themselves. That became a generic term, just story, for a small piece of work or need or something using a template that Rachel Davies came up with as I want so that. Most of us have experienced that is no bueno. It doesn't work very well. But there was a book written, and I drank the Kool-Aid too. I read a couple of books, and I was like, oh yeah, this sounds cool. Except for it didn't really work. And most people sort of abandoned it who know what they're doing anyway. But it's everywhere. So stories, story points. That's another thing.
You're a big fan, I heard.
I think they can be fine. I was
just baiting you, dude.
I've just never seen anybody. Oh, I know. I've just never seen anybody use it successfully. And there are all kinds of people who tell me, oh, well, I have. And then I ask them, well, when and where? Well, I was a senior level management consultant in 2013. I'm like, okay, well, you're not, and we're not there anymore. So are you sure? Plus,
do you want to pontificate a little bit on just like we're not attacking anybody, it's just the concept or whatever. Why does it fail? Like, what is it? What are the story points? What's the intention? And then how do they miss that?
So the original intention for the XP guys was to compare. So they got all these cards called user stories, and at any given moment, they're trying to figure out, what do we want to do next? And they're looking at their stories, and they would do. This is the way I was told by at least one person. I don't know if they did this at Chrysler, but definitely other people have. Kane Marr, I think, in Australia is the one who told me about this. And they would just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And whatever you held up, they would compare and see, okay, so 1 is the simplest thing we could possibly find to do right now. I mean, it's a slam dunk. 5 is, well, that's pretty hairy, scary. That's going to take probably longer and be harder. But that's it. It's a relative judgment. And it didn't have any specific label. Originally, I heard anyway, that Ron Jeffries called them gummy bears, not stories.
Okay.
They're just called gummy bears because it's a relative judgment on the part of the people doing the work. How hard is the problem compared to other problems? That's it. It got turned into a way to figure out schedule and budget, I think. Right. Because
I've heard like developers and good developers say that, hey, make up a number. A 7, an 8 is blah 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 hours, and it's like that. Your answer to that would be like.
My answer to that would be that's not true, particularly in Scrum, right? Scrum's an empirical approach, so we're finding our way to the right thing. We don't know what we're going to make before it actually gets into a sprint.
Yeah. Right?
The thing that's coming from my product owner ought to be something that describes a person and their need. And I don't get too hung up on the why, because we're going to talk to each other and then we can figure out why for real. But it's just it's a dead simple way of doing it, but it's completely the opposite of what we're used to. Like, I started out as a designer and then I was in project management. All of that says set it all up front. Set it all up front and let it run like a top. And project managers have done that for years and years and years. And it was only recently, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but I think it's important because I did a panel discussion on the Agile Network about this. The challenge, I think, I was going somewhere, now I forgot. I haven't had enough Monster yet.
It's all right.
What was I talking about?
Man, we'll have to watch it in post, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like, I got a question. Oh, here's one thing that's weird. You said you started like early on and you were like, hey, everybody nails it down up front. And then as they go forward, you said you even before started that, you said garage bands. That could be way off, dude. I'm taking a gamble. But like, is it like I've never written a song? Like, but is like you said, like, hey, we don't know exactly what we're doing until we get it into the Scrum and we don't know what we're building. Is it
Yeah.
kind of like writing a song?
I think, yeah, that's a good analogy actually, because right, you have a cross-functional group of people, meaning they have all the skills, knowledge, and ability required to do all of the stuff required to make something happen. If it's software, it's software. If it's music, it's the same thing. I mean, unless you're a solo artist, you're in a band, and I did a bunch of studio work, and that's definitely, most of the work isn't even done by the musicians in studio; it's done by the producer, right?
Right.
So, unless you're, Taylor Swift or something, then you get to make your own decisions. But yeah, so what do we got? So what do we got? We've got players of all the different kinds of instruments. We've got people who understand the tech, somebody running a soundboard and all that, and they're all working together to iterate towards a final song. Yeah. So I think that's a good analogy. All right. Now then the question is, who's product owner in that?
I mean, I don't know, either Elvis or the guy above Elvis with the big hat. I don't know which one of those it was, but yeah. So, yeah. You're the artist. I don't know at that point. Like, so
I don't actually know either, but analogies break down.
Yeah. We get them.
Maybe the
enough.
producer, probably the producer might
probably the producer.
Yeah.
All right. I can dig it. I like that. So like, as you see it, like some people are like, I'm this side, I'm that side, very binary. You see us like XP and Scrum, like living together. Or how do we?
I think they should. I think they should. Scrum by itself doesn't do anything.
Right.
Right. I mean, the whole framework is defined in a 11-page document on the internet that's curated by Ken. He and Jeff Sutherland both curated it, and they came up with the name. They wrote the first white paper. Ken started the Scrum Alliance and the whole certification thing. So, I mean, people can disagree, but that's sort of like, I don't know, disagreeing with the inventor of the light bulb about how the light bulb works.
Difficult. Yeah.
I mean, the light bulb works the way it works, and the guy who invented it, I mean, he stole it from Tesla, but still.
Yeah. Sorry, we're talking about the light bulb guy, not Ken. Like,
no, Ken didn't steal anything from Tesla. He's old, but he's not that old.
Yeah, I got you. And so as we go in there, like back to the thing, what was like you were a developer, like or programmer, like what was that thing that you liked? Was it the fact that like, hey, a guy's in a room with us? That like the
about
customer,
XP?
What made about XP? Yeah, what was it?
It made every. You don't have to guess. Right, we were used to writing these detailed, comprehensive requirements documents, big thick stack of paper, and then we'd give that to developers, and then somebody on that side would interpret that in a new way and write a technical spec, and then you'd have a designer do a design, and you'd have somebody on architecture and infrastructure do that, and so it's just very stepwise, right? It's a phased development model. Now, and actually, what made Ken think of, well, this is what he told me. People will argue that it wasn't him, and he did tell me. Never mind. He read an article in the Harvard Business Review about product development, just regular consumer product development, and this was 1994 or 95 maybe, right as he was writing the white paper, and it was by Takeuchi and Nanaka, two Japanese guys. And what they said was that product development, the world changes too fast now in the product development craziness of 1986. It's very old, but they said, product development takes too long now. If you do it with a single, a phased or stage-gated approach, like a relay race. It's like a relay race. Here's the problem. The feedback loop is real long, right? So, you have a group of designers and they design. And then they hand the design over the wall to a group of developers who develop. And then they hand the wall over to a group of testers who test. And it's not until the end that for some reason that we finally go to that utterly awful and terrible phase that we call UAT. That's what it stands for, by the way. They say it's user acceptance. It's not. It's user rejection normally, because why? Humans are terrible at telling us what they want. They're good at piling on about what they don't like, right? So that's the problem. And Takeuchi and Nanaka said the problem is even if you run the whole race perfectly, if you drop the baton at the last leg, UAT, it fails. You still lose. And that happened 3 out of 4 times, according to the research. The federal government studied their projects, their software and tech projects from 1986 to 1995. They did this in 99, right when agility was starting to blow up. And they said that the Department of Defense said that 95% of their tech projects failed, meaning not on time, not on budget, didn't meet minimum stakeholder requirements. So there was a problem that we were trying to fix. And the problem is making the wrong thing. And the only way we could figure out to do that is to go there 2 weeks at a time and get it in front of real people.
Yeah.
And I initially I thought this was stupid, right? Because I was a designer, and I'm like, you at least got to do the design up front, right? Turns out you don't. I mean, I just wrote a paper about emergent design because people ask all the time, like, what is it? It's a key component of Scrum and any Agile approach I know of, and yet nobody does it.
Well, talk to me about emergent design. Like, I know that you're in there. Like, we're hitting all the key spot. This is getting all the Jimi hits. Like, emergent design. What? Tell me about it. Teach me, please.
So, emergent design is this notion that we don't have to design everything up front. And in fact, if we're doing Scrum, which is an empirical approach, we shouldn't, because that locks things down. And then if we made the wrong decision, we won't find out until much, much later, right? So XP teams particularly, but really any Agile team ought to be doing emergent design, which is let the design emerge based on what people actually want and need. And you're standing up, if you're a designer, you're standing up the stuff that the rest of the team is going to, finalize and all that. So it's allowing design to emerge. There's another thing that Alistair Coburn calls incremental re-architecture. Any Agile approach is planned rework. We know we're going to make the wrong thing. Let's not make it too wrong. Get it in front of somebody and fix it, right? And XPers do some of this with what's called merciless refactoring. That's an XP practice.
I like that. That's a good term. Merciless refactoring. Yeah.
It's a great term, and that's part of the XP workflow, which is you check something out, you write a test fails, you write code, you pass the test. Once the test passed, then you refactor the code so that it's neat and clean. And there's a bunch of other practices for developers in there, like don't repeat it, right? Anything that's written down in code should only be written down once in one place.
Okay.
And a bunch of other things, but the emergent design part is huge, and I think watching that happen, I didn't believe in it at all. I thought that's ridiculous. That won't happen because XP teams don't necessarily always do emergent design. Scrum teams do, because Scrum's empirical. Okay. So an XP team often is very work focused. I mean, that's sort of how that whole how many gummy bears as that thing came about. But yeah, I mean, I wrote a white paper. I can send it to you.
I'd love to read it.
I put it out. It's on my landing page, but it's a little bit more technical because it's easy to explain to a layperson what emergent design is. You're sketching in the design as you go, right?
That's
so
awesome.
It's like
we're building stuff on our side, humble as it is. But like, I want to challenge us, my guys and I, to be like, are we doing this, or are we going like a little bit heavy on the front end? Like, it'll be fun to look at in that respect.
Well, and that's the question too. Is Scrum's the only brand that people recognize, and they either love it or they hate it. The sort of generic Agile doesn't mean anything. Usually, it means a bunch of stuff you got to do to use Jira these days. So it's misunderstood greatly. And I think the empiricism angle is the big one. And even people that I feel like should know better. I mean, I've had conversations with a bunch of different people on podcasts and other things that, they've been doing this as long as I have, but they're still using ideas from the 90s that were in a white paper that was written in 1995, or a couple of books that came out in the early 2000s. And it's like,
right.
Whereas if you look at the guide, the Scrum guide at scrumguides.org, that's the standard that Ken and Jeff Sutherland curate, and a bunch of us contribute to that and have contributed to it over the years. So it's a group effort, certainly, and it's people that mostly have failed a lot, That's the only way you
True.
learn is by failing on it. So, but you can look at that. Anybody can look at that and look at the revision history and see what Scrum was and what it is today. It's been pared down. It's been stripped down. It's getting out of the way. It mostly lets teams work together and keeps management kind of out of the way. And then managers get stressed out about it. And they're like, what do I do? I get project managers, especially, they're like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, something else. Like if you want to do regular, I almost left the tech world entirely. I mean, I was in a publishing company, but I almost was gonna when I got my MBA, I was like, I might just go to construction because the software is crazy, and this stuff makes more sense in a construction environment. Anywhere where you can solve the paper, if you can solve it on paper up front, do it. Yeah. But because Scrum's the only brand, everybody says they're doing Scrum, but are they? I don't know. If you look at the guide and look at what they're doing, probably not. And if you look at just the basic principles of agility at agilemanifesto.org, probably not doing those things either, right? Particularly like, the first rule of agility is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And then I walk in and they're like, oh yeah, we have to use Jira. We have to use the Rachel Davies story template. We have to use story points. We have to use burn downs. I'm like, okay, well, you're breaking the first rule, man. I mean, like literally the number one rule is let the team decide how they're going to do the work that they do.
Right. And so like a lot of I think competition as we go toward the close here, like with these project managers traditionally is like the pair programming thing. Like I can imagine them shivering, being like, no, I can't take 2 FTEs, what they would call them, not people would call them like FTEs. And they'd say, that's a waste or something, right?
Yeah. And it's because they don't understand, and nobody's going to believe anything just because somebody says it, right? Usually, True. Right? So I tell people, look, you don't got to trust me for long. I mean, sprints are 2 weeks. Suspend whatever it is that is getting in the way, and we can ask the team what it is. It's probably policy. Suspend all that. Let them play by different rules just long enough to see if it'll work here and is the right thing. But
empiricism, basically, right?
The whole framework is empirical, right? So it's finding your way to the right thing, and Scrum is an engine for change. So, but it is very different from what we were raised up on as project managers, because PMI was started in 1969 by commercial real estate developers and DoD folks, right? So that's all problems that you can solve on paper up front. Software, why did software people take it in the 90s? Because they didn't know any better. They didn't have anything. There was no project management framework for software, because previously it had been a bunch of super geniuses on computers the size of a hoopty, a big Cadillac or something, even big.
Yeah. A Chrysler. Yes.
A Chrysler. There you go. Good callback.
There you go. Callback. Yeah.
So, a lot of times I get accused of being like relentlessly negative. It's not that I'm negative. It's that I've seen this work on a handful of occasions. I know it can, but it's real hard because humans don't want change, and it's a change.
Yeah. But so like maybe we could do another one of these things. I don't, sell myself into another conversation with Jimmy, which would be nice. Like maybe we can talk about like the things that like the happy path potentially, or we'll workshop the title, but like how you would implement it, or when it works well, like how like, oh my God, we got something here.
Sure.
Like those kind of things. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and I'd love to have that conversation. I'd love to come back.
Yeah, that's cool.
I talk for a living, so anywhere I can do that is good.
I can dig it, man. So Jimmy, like if people wanted to if they're like the cut of his jib, I want more of Jimmy. Like how do they get in touch with you? Where do they go? They want to join one of your classes, etc. How do they do that?
They can just go to fearlessagility.com.
That's awesome.
Fearlessagility.com. And that emergent design paper, which I pushed out on social, but my tens of followers aren't going to share that very widely. It's on my landing page. So if you go to the landing page, it's a whole white paper. And it's a good thing I gave it to people who are not technical to give to a designer, because UX people and front end people often don't get looped into this because of the way they're raised. But fearlessagility.com, it's got my memes, it's got merch, it's got my whole schedule for the workshops that I offer. I do 3 Scrum Alliance workshops, so
that's awesome, man. Well, that's good. I will put everybody there. I pray that this won't be the last time we talk. And
I
so
don't think it will.
Awesome. I don't think it will either. Jimmy, I appreciate 1,000%. I learned a ton. I'm going to go read your paper and my guys, and we're going to talk about it. And Lord willing, we get a little bit better from it. I think we will. And let's do this again, man.
Yeah. Let me know if you need an XP coach.
Well, we might, but I think we do. Like, we got good tech. Yeah, because like I don't know. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. I tell everybody I don't even know the password to my website. That's how technically sound I am. And so like, yeah,
you have
my
people.
boys in the back are good.
Yeah. You have people.
I have people. Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
very lucky.
I have people. My IT guy is top shelf. It's because it's you. Shut up.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's other Jimmy. Yeah.
Other Jimmy is pretty good at technical stuff, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy, I appreciate it, dude. I thank you
course.
so much, and we will talk again. Thank you, man.
Yes, we will. Peace.
Yes, sir.